We all know there are some pretty horrible diseases out there. AIDS, Ebola, Zika virus, black mold, and countless STDs that we are warned of since childhood. We have a natural revulsion to spit and blood, almost as if on some deep primal level we are terrified of being infected. But which of us out there hasn't been bitten by a mosquito or some other bug? We all have. We don't tend to think much about it or how life-changing a single bite can be. In the fall of 2017, I traveled to Pennsylvania to learn the truth about tick bites and Lyme disease. What I found was shocking and disturbing. A single bite from a tick, even if it hasn't been attached for long, can change your life forever. You can suffer from it like few diseases can make you suffer. And on top of that, doctors commonly fail to diagnose what is wrong with you. 40% of the time, treatment fails. And insurance does not help you pay for anything.
Saw one on this tree.
Saw one on that tree?
This tree right here. See how the bark's porous? They have to have a place to get out of the sun. They don't like the sun. Like I said, they don't like the sun, but they will climb up and wait for a host to come by. And they say they don't jump, but they do. It's like a little hop.
Wow, they really do hop.
A little hop to them, yeah. Three of my favorite hobbies was fishing, hunting, and gardening.
So I bet a lot of gardeners get Lyme then.
Oh yeah, yeah. I used to have about 150 by 30 garden over here. This is what I'm down to now. But they'll crawl in a crevice like this and live there. Whereas you never had to worry about it before. My name's Jim, and this is the Altoona, PA area. Actually, my story starts almost 6 years ago. In another month, it'll be 6 years that I was up on this mountain, and I was hunting, but I was basically taking a walk in the woods. And it was around lunchtime, and I got a little tired. I was walking on trails, and I decided to take a little break, and there was a log laying there, and I sat down on the log, unknowing that the log was rotted. Anyways, I fell straight to the ground in a pile of leaves, and thought nothing of it, got up right away, and came home, and my big mistake is I didn't take a shower that night. I don't know if you have ever spent all day outside. You know, you get tired and lazy, basically what happened. And the next morning I woke up and went to put my pants on, and a tick was right on my belt line. So unfortunately, my wife hadn't left for work yet. She picked it off with a pair of tweezers, and I put it in a paper towel, not knowing whether it was alive or dead. Okay, so I opened it up about an hour later, and sure enough, the tick started moving. So my wife did an excellent job in getting it off of me, but naturally I killed it right away. Okay, so other than having a welt at the bite site, I had no problems for 6 months. Okay, after 6 months, my life it's hard to explain what my life went to. My anxiety was terrible, and it was an uncontrollable anxiety to where it's hard to explain to people. But anyways, that continued, and that was in the summertime. By wintertime, I was having a lot of issues with fatigue, and I would wake up in the morning and felt like a truck hit me. And I didn't know what was going on. You should wake up refreshed. Well, I wake up and I honestly felt like a truck hit me. And I also started getting crazy things like earaches, jaw pain, and as time progressed, I became more fatigued. I do construction work, so I thought maybe I was just overdoing it. I was getting old, but it was after I progressively kept getting worse. Different symptoms: anxiety, fatigue, pain. Broke this wrist when I was in 9th grade. The pain was just a stabbing pain. Slip disc. The Lyme spirochete likes to attack any injured spot. Well, no, this has come to find out later, but I just kept enduring, and then my vision, it started to affect my vision. I could be sitting here talking to you and you would go completely out of focus, which is a scary thing. And sometimes I would get short periods of blindness in one eye, floaters in my eyes. Anyways, it was after 2 years I ended up being admitted to the hospital with stroke-like symptoms. Okay, that was after 2 years. I'm trying to keep everything into perspective here. I'm sure you've heard of Lyme fall, and that's another situation we deal with. And naturally, I had every test under the sun, every test you could think of. Everything came back, you're fine. Okay, so I'm living with this nightmare. It's the only way to explain it. It's a living nightmare. And finally, I'd had enough after 3 years, and my wife was seeing it. My hips were starting to lock up. Pain was getting more intense. I was just ready. I was ready to end it, and my wife saw through that, and she made me promise her to keep fighting, even though we didn't know what was wrong with me. Keep fighting. Well, after 3.5 years, her and I went to a counselor. I had been tested for Lyme 4 different times. I had the Western blot 3 or 4 times, and then I had the ELISA once, I believe. And every time came back negative. Okay, so I see, this is where the fog comes in. Okay, like I said, I was tested several times. Anyways, we went to a counselor because we both thought we were going crazy. You can't be sick for 3.5 years, and something not be wrong with you. Okay, so we went to see a female counselor, and first session with her, I spoke to her and I told her, she asked if I was suicidal, and I wasn't going to lie, yeah. And I proceeded to tell her my symptoms, and she says, "It sounds like you have Lyme disease." I said, "No." I said, "I've been tested several times for it." With the most serious look on her face, she told me, "So was I." Okay, right then it was like, really?
Jim went on to be diagnosed and treated for Lyme disease, but many, many people never make it that far. They continue to suffer, having no idea what's wrong with them. When and if someone does suggest Lyme disease, they often test negative. In Jim's case, he remembers the tick bite very well, but that isn't the norm. Most people have no idea how it started. They don't remember any bite. But bite or no bite, their suffering is just as real.
I'm Michelle. I'm from Altoona, Pennsylvania. I'm 43 years old. My story about Lyme is a long one, really. I feel like I probably got bit, if I had to guess, in 97 or 1998. I didn't get diagnosed with Lyme until April of 2016. So that's a lot of years to not know what you have going wrong with your body, It sort of progressed slowly at first. Back in the 90s, I was bit by, I don't know if it was a tick. I never saw a tick on me, but I'm very active. I've always been into hiking, into kayaking, going for walks, just doing lots of things outdoors, camping, things like that. I was on a beach trip, actually, and I had got bit by something. Now we were sort of in a beach where there's sand, but there was also woods. We were on vacationing, and I had a bite the first or second day I was there, and I didn't know what bit me, but it was big. Like, there was a very big area getting red on my leg. It was not a bullseye, however, and this was in the 90s, so honestly, I probably wouldn't have thought of Lyme disease anyway. I wouldn't have thought of a bullseye rash or a tick bite. I thought it was some kind of bite, but I knew it wasn't a mosquito bite because it wasn't itchy, and it sort of hurt a little bit. It was just sort of swelling and spreading and getting bigger. It lasted the whole time I was on my trip. I'm the food and beverage manager now at the Wingate in Altoona, and I am always running on my feet. I get tired when I sit still, so I like to be busy. But I noticed a big difference in myself. Over the years, it felt like I was getting old fast. I knew that I wasn't old enough to be feeling as tired as I was all the time. And the symptoms would go off and on. It seemed like I'd go through phases where it would be months, periods, where I just felt like I had a flu. And then I would start to feel maybe a little better again. And then it would happen. And it just kept going off and on. And I added in more and more odd symptoms. When that would happen, I would be freezing cold, and just cover with blankets and not get out of bed until it would break, and I'd be sweating then. Now I'm sweating, and it would happen like this off and on. And I would just feel body aches, muscle aches, headaches. And I would start to get this happening more and more recently. So I was constantly going to the doctors. They were constantly dishing me out some antibiotics. And I honestly feel like that is why my symptoms kept going up and down. It would be like, okay, well, you have another sinus infection, so here's some more antibiotics. Take them for 14 days. And I'd take them, and I'd start to be a little bit better. And then that would last maybe a month, and it would happen again. It was like a cycle of constantly up and down. But I feel like it was the antibiotics that were keeping it at bay at times. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, everything started coming and staying, not just going off and on anymore. Real bad neck pain, really bad joint pain, muscle pain, and muscle knots, I guess, to describe them. I get them really bad in my neck and in my jaw. Like, I have TMJ on, especially this side. It would hurt so bad this whole way down my arm and under my arm and around, that I would go to get massages or go to the chiropractor, and they'd be like, you have like a rock, like it feels like there's a rock in your shoulder. Like it is constantly this muscle like seizing up, and they would not know why. Once it would get that bad, it would give me these headaches that started at the base of my neck that I never had migraines, and I wouldn't get really like nauseous from them or anything, but it would be the worst pain in the back of my head that I just did not know what to do to get rid of it. Like so bad I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't concentrate. The only thing that helped me was to like put pressure on that muscle knot. Like it must have been pinching a nerve. It must have been that kind of like nerve pain that I was getting, but it was awful to the point where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm laying in bed so much because I'm so tired, and now I'm having this pain that is like preventing me from doing anything that I want to be doing. It was affecting my job. It was affecting my marriage. My husband at the time, I was going to one doctor after another. I mean, and I'm talking like chiropractors, physical therapists, a regular doctor. Then they would send me to a neurologist, and then they sent me to a rheumatologist. And I mean, just doctors beyond doctors, and they would all say, we're not sure what's going on. It doesn't look like there's anything really standing out over the years. They would say my stomach problems were, you have a lazy bowel. I had a colonoscopy. You have a lazy bowel, or you have IBS. You have fibromyalgia. You have chronic fatigue syndrome. These are all the things I was diagnosed over the years. Acid reflux. I was diagnosed with that. I was diagnosed with TMJ. I was diagnosed with interstitial cystitis because I was having bladder problems and pain in my bladder and blood in my urine, which I found out later is totally a Lyme thing. Apparently interstitial cystitis is definitely a thing that happens with Lyme patients a lot, which I'd never even heard of, and I thought, like, how would I get? But you get like a lot of UTIs suddenly, and pain, and pelvic pain, like things that were just none of these symptoms seemed related. They all just had a reason for it. Well, it's, you're getting older, all the sweating you're doing, and then you're cold and being sweaty and being hot, and you must be going through premenopause. You're getting in your 40s now. You're getting older. That's why you're tired, or maybe you pulled a muscle, or, like it was just constantly they had some kind of reason, and they'd be like, here, take these anti-inflammatories, or here's a muscle relaxer for you, or, whatever. But it was not, they were not trying to get to the bottom of anything. What I did notice was stress. If I was under stress, it made my symptoms like 100 times worse. If it was because I'm a woman, if I was, having my period or something around my cycle, it was 100 times worse. Like I would get ill, really ill for like the week around my cycle, really ill if I had any type of stress, if it was job related, relationship related. That's the frustrating part, I feel like, with having Lyme, because I think I look tired a lot, and a lot of times you put on makeup so you don't look so tired, but other than that, you don't look sick for the most part. January of 2016, and I had a breakdown in my doctor's office. I started crying, and I said, listen, you're giving me so many excuses of why I have all these symptoms that are, you're saying they're not related, and I need an answer, because I'm feeling like I'm dying, like I don't feel well at all. So he finally was like, okay, I'm gonna do a whole panel of blood work. We're gonna, see what it says. I'll get back to you. At that point in January of 2016, he did a Lyme test, and it came back negative. That was the first Lyme test I ever got. I wasn't even thinking Lyme in my head. And he said that my C-reactive protein was very high, which he explained to me showed inflammation in your body somewhere. So to him that meant, yeah, maybe you do have some kind of inflammation that is like a rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or MS, something. That's what he was now thinking. So we were on to something finally. So I thought, he said, well, I'm going to send you to the rheumatologist again. It took me 2 months to get in to the rheumatologist. Finally, when I went in there, I explained to him all my symptoms, the numbness and the pain and everything. And I was in pain. I mean, an 8 to 10 on the scale on a daily basis, and fatigue that was an 8 to 10, and so the rheumatologist said, did you ever get tested for Lyme? I said, oh yeah, he just tested me in January and it came back negative. Okay, well, I'm going to do more blood work. I'm going to do that. Just humor me. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and run a whole bunch of blood work again just to see. He's like, I feel like you maybe have like thoracic outlet syndrome. So he said, I'm going to refer you to the neurologist. We are going to send you for an MRI of your brain and of your neck and, your upper thoracic. But while we're doing that, I'm going to get blood work again, and we're going to see what happens. So I felt like he was listening to me at least, so that was good. He called about a week and a half later and said, your Lyme test came up positive. So from the day he called me to the time that I had the first Lyme test, it was exactly a 2-month period. No, it was 4 months. It was 4 months. It was from January to April. It was weird. It was the same day. We went January 26th to April 26th, and that ended up being my birthday. So it was funny, I was like, okay, so I find out I have Lyme disease on my birthday. Great. Well, at least I have an answer. I actually felt like celebrating because as I didn't really believe him because I'm thinking, what? How? I never had a bullseye rash that I remember, and I don't think I ever got bit by a tick. I never found a tick on me because the media and everything about Lyme disease, what I thought I knew, because I thought I knew things because I owned a daycare center for years, and I would keep up on illnesses and childhood illnesses and things to look for in children, lice and rashes because they were always getting stuff. I really thought that because I never had a bullseye rash and because I never found a tick on me that there was no way I could possibly have Lyme disease.
My name's Amber, and I'm originally from Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania, but I live in Altoona, and I've lived here for many years. And in the early 2016, Jim, who's also local, put an ad in the paper asking if anyone was interested in starting a Lyme disease support group. And I happened to see that little ad in the paper and called him along with some other people who called him, and we decided to start a group here, and we did that last year. And there's been a lot of interest in that. Our first meeting in August of last year, we showed the documentary Under Our Skin about the unrecognized epidemic of Lyme disease, and we were hoping 5 or 10 people would even show up, and nearly 100 people came. And so we knew that there was a problem in this area. And there's a lot of people around here with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome and other autoimmune diseases and rheumatoid arthritis, and just a lot of problems that can be caused by hidden infections such as Lyme or co-infections that ticks also carry.
But it's hard. People are scared to try different things, and when you talk to someone that is suffering, or you even know somebody had a tick bite, and you try to tell them that's a tick bite, and they're like, no, my doctor said that it isn't, and I'll be fine. And in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, God bless you, in another 10 years, if your immune gets so compromised, you're going to be so sick, because they weren't treated. Or they have a bullseye and they go, no, my test came back positive. A bullseye means automatically that's Lyme disease. That's 100% Lyme disease. But why will they listen to you over their doctor? They won't. So that's the frustrating part. Not that I know everything, because I don't, but I've learned so much through being sick. Like, I just learned a lot, and what I learned, I feel that I experienced and treated myself on things that worked, but I definitely don't know everything. But, that's my frustration. When people think that the doctor is like a god and they can't be wrong, or they'll say, I have MS, or I have lupus. I have watched a guy from my church who was diagnosed with Lyme disease. He had a positive test. The next test was negative, which it can be. So they told him, you don't have Lyme disease. He got lupus, and then he got ALS, was in a wheelchair, and then he died. And he was young. And he told his mom, I think it was Lyme disease. Like, that frustrates me to no end. I'm like, how can that happen? You know, and we've had people die from our Lyme disease group, you know, where doctors refuse to do any more treatment, and it's sad, it breaks your heart, you know. But if you've been diagnosed with something, it doesn't hurt. Go that extra step and make sure you have MS, that you have lupus, that you have, you know, any kind of neurological thing that you have going on that you were diagnosed with. That is a name for a symptom that the doctors came up with that they don't have an explanation for. They don't know what caused it. So look for that root cause. You either have an infection or something causing that, you know? And don't just settle for that's what you have and that's what I'm going to live with the rest of my life. Because you can find the answer. And once it gets to a late stage of like ALS, there may not be any hope. I had a lady that I knew that had that, and she was going to the same doctor as me, and I told the doctor, I think she has Lyme disease, but she was diagnosed, she had a lot of other problems, but she was diagnosed with ALS. A year later, it was confirmed she had Lyme disease, but it was too late. It did permanent damage, and she ended up dying just this past 2 months. And she was, I think, 40-some years old.
Jim, Amber, and Lisa created a Lyme disease support group to help do something about the significant lack of correct information about Lyme disease. They all live in the Altoona, Pennsylvania area, a hotbed of ticks and the mice that are mainly responsible for spreading them, not deer, which is another misconception. There are so many misconceptions about Lyme. Another is that there are few states where you can get infected. In fact, it's in all 50 states. It's something we all need to know about. More than one of those we had talked to had been treated in Arizona from a naturopathic trained doctor. They had found success when conventional doctors had failed to help.
Okay, welcome. I'm Dr. Ken Mitchell, Lifestream Wellness Clinic here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Lyme rarely comes in all by itself. You know, you get a vector bite, whether it's a tick, a mosquito, a flea, gnat, bedbug, kissing bug. There's, you know, anything that can bite and transmit blood is capable of transmitting the infections. So it's a matter of finding out what's on board. You know, and sometimes it's not Lyme, sometimes it's just the co-infections. It's, you know, Borrelia, Lyme, it's in all 50 states, it's in over 60 countries worldwide, and this misinformation that much of the conventional medical community thinks that it's just, you know, it's just New England that it's limited to is very naive, because it's everywhere, and I've got patients that have picked it up in a wide variety of places here in Arizona. We got pretty much all the different climates here, from forests to deserts to everything in between.
My name is Michael Dunn. I'm 31. I'll be 32 in March, and I've been affected directly that I know of Lyme for the past year, but I don't have any signs of being bitten. No tick bites, no, nothing like that. A lot of it for me is just became a cognitive factor. And I went and had a neurotransmitter, or basically a whole blood panel done, a test for neurotransmitters, etc. And I'm perfectly fine. The dopamine, serotonin levels, so there's something bigger going on in my brain, and unfortunately, we're having a hard time getting to the bottom of it. And on a daily, I deal with multiple panic attacks, anxiety attacks, etc. So, as you can see here, this is just part of a lot of the blood work and paperwork that I've had done. I've had almost 10 panels done now, of 22 blood draws each time. And each time they go through and they test, you know, everything from TGF-beta1, which is your autoimmune system. My biggest factor is I had a autoimmune issue where I was attacking myself constantly in fight or flight is what they kept thinking, and they didn't result directly to Lyme off that blood work. Before that, they found a bunch of other co-infections that I had, called walking pneumonia, and then also a real big IBS, almost like irritable bowel syndrome. So we treated those with Zithromax and flucoxamine. I did 2 segments of those, which brought down my TGF-beta1 from, in a normal range for a person is, between 800 to 6,000. Mine was 27,500. So that's how high my TGF-beta1 was. So after going through the flucoxamine and other antibiotics, it dropped down to 5,880. So that dropped it quite a bit. I also went gluten-free on that same time, and then did also an elimination diet, where I started off with this chicken and rice, and then added a veggie once a week. And now I'm kind of cheating, so to say, but I'm eating things that are a lot cleaner than I ever have been.
As I interviewed person after person with Lyme disease, over and over again I heard the same story. Testing came back negative, only later to find out, oh sorry, I guess you had Lyme disease after all. Over and over again, people said to me, we need more accurate testing. How much more accurate would testing be, I wonder, if bands 31 and 34 were included in the Western blot?
People come in with, in a variety of presentations. Sometimes they suspect that they've got Lyme. Many times they just come in for other health issues, and then we dig into things, and maybe it's there, maybe it's not. Oftentimes we find other challenges. The key for any physician is doing the history. Patients will tell you what's going wrong if you listen to them long enough. And again, this is typically what doesn't happen in modern medicine is, in a 5-minute consult. That you have to listen to the patient and find out where it is. As far as for Lyme testing, that can be very challenging, especially because the conventional tests typically use the ELISA type testing. In other words, simply put, it's looking to see, did the immune system see this pathogen that's evolved over millennia to evade the immune system? So if it evades the immune system, you're not going to be making the antibodies that those tests are looking for. And this is, again, where most of the conventional physicians fail because they don't understand this. They don't have the training from ILADs. So as far as for the testing, your local testing here is typically, it's not going to be finding much. It's if it manages to find it, it's great. But it's low-hanging fruit, if you will. My understanding was that the detection rate for Western blot was about 47% for Borrelia burgdorferi. So that's one strain of over 300 strains of Borrelia. If it happens to be one of the other 300 strains, typically that test isn't going to pick it up. Or it's going to be much lower on the probability. If you do a blood PCR test, detection rate goes down to around 17% is what I understand. So again, it's, but although if it does find it, it's much more specific because it's actually matching up the genetics, the nucleic acid sequences, so it's getting an exact picture of it, or the protein amino acid sequences, so it's exact matching of that, so if it comes back, then it is. So the better testing that we found has been the urine PCR testing, but you have to do some exercise, preferably with some lymphatic massage in order to bust up the biofilms, get the pathogens out of the joints, out of the muscles, out of the tissues, and into the circulation. Then we'll let the kidneys concentrate all the pathogens in the urine, so you get a better sample size in order to, and hopefully you can try to find it. So, with all these tests, it's just a matter of being able to pick it up if you can. Otherwise, then you're left with the old-fashioned having to diagnose from symptoms, which sometimes we have to do, but we prefer to get the lab to back us up. But you take a look at the symptom picture, and the vast majority of times it's pretty spot on. Just depends on the skill of the clinician. Did you do your homework?
It's a long story. I had a late summer flu-like illness in 1987, and I was very sick with a fever and a very sore throat and body aches and headache, and just felt really horrible. And I did go to my doctor at the time, and he told me I had a virus. So I did not receive any antibiotics, and eventually that flu-like illness did go away. And a number of weeks later, I had a constant ache in my right hip. And a number of weeks after that, I had an acute illness where I had a fever and chills, and every joint in my body was throbbing as if it were hit by a hammer. You see in a cartoon when it's throbbing. That's what it felt like. Every finger joint, every toe joint, every large joint in my body was throbbing. And that lasted for, I think it was a couple weeks. And I went back to the doctor, and they said, we'll send you to a rheumatologist. When that throbbing resolved, I was left with all over muscle pain and stiffness and sleep difficulty. So this probably all happened within a span of about 5 months. So I went to the rheumatologist, and he really didn't have any idea what to say, what was wrong with me. Eventually, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. We know that's really just another name for a set of symptoms. Now we know that. At the time, people didn't know much about any of this. The symptoms did get worse. When I was in my 40s, everything started to go downhill. And I had had some Lyme tests during all those years, because I had suspected, but they were always negative. So I got to the point where I could not sleep really at all. I was sleeping between 0 and 4 hours a night. Just had a lot of brain fog. The fatigue was horrible because I wasn't sleeping. Still had a lot of pain in my body. So against my better judgment, I just started trying some sleeping medications. I was desperate. And the first couple I tried really didn't do anything. And then I tried Ambien CR, and all hell broke loose. That pharmaceutical drug must have really triggered something in my neurological system. The infection must have gone wild at that point. I developed such unbearable pain in my neck and my head that I didn't know how I was going to live with that. It felt like I had a 4-inch diameter drill bit drilling through the back of my skull and coming out my mouth 24/7. So that sent me on a journey to find out what was really wrong with me, and I knew I was going to have to figure that out myself. So I just did a lot of internet research. I'm a registered nurse, and so I was able to understand medical literature and things. And so I read a lot. I read Dr. Burrascano's paper titled Advanced Topics in Lyme Disease, and he talked about testing and how bad the testing was, how unreliable it really is for Lyme. And he talked about Lyme-specific bans on a Western blot. And so I was able to get the doctor I was working with over the phone to order some testing from Igenix laboratory in California. And so he ordered a Western blot that I requested and a few other tests. And when that came back to his office, he called me and said that it was negative and that I did not have Lyme disease. And I said, please just fax me the results. So they did, and when I looked at those results, there were a couple Lyme-specific bands that were positive, even though the overall result of the test was read as negative because I didn't meet the criteria of having to have certain bands show up, a certain number of a certain bands. So I knew from those Lyme-specific bands on that Western blot that I had been exposed. And when I looked back at my history of that late summer flu-like illness, and then everything that happened to me after that, and living in Pennsylvania where we were exposed to tick environments all the time, I thought it just really makes sense. So from there, I went online and I found a Lyme literate doctor who could treat me, and I traveled to see him for 3.5 years. And he did, I spent my first appointment with him lasted 6 hours. He did such a thorough exam. I'd never seen anything like it. He inspected my fingernails and toenails with a magnifying glass. I mean, he checked everything. He was very good. And he did more lab work, sent that away, took a great history, physical, and I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, Bartonella, and I had also showed evidence in my blood work of having Rocky Mountain spotted fever in the past, and I didn't know that.
Well, certainly, patients just need to get proper treatment in order to get better. If the biggest roadblocks are the first, just the misdiagnoses, because these pathogens, they'll present as over 300 different disorders. So you may have a diagnosis of autism or polymyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis or Alzheimer's or Lou Gehrig's or irritable bowel, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. It could be a skin disorder. I've seen lichen sclerosis that was Borrelia. There's just a wide variety of disorders that this gets misdiagnosed as. And unfortunately, this is very common that patients go in and they have a collection of symptoms, they get a label attached to it, and then the search to try to find out what the underlying cause of that ends right there. So I've got a number of multiple sclerosis patients, for example, that it was like, oh, you have MS, and it's like, and they're done. It's like, okay, well, what caused it? It's like, oh, we don't know, but we have all these drugs here to treat it. And this is where, again, conventional medicine typically fails these patients.
I felt fully, after he told me I had Lyme and I started researching it and reading all the symptoms, I knew I had Lyme. Like, there was no doubt in my mind that every symptom that I've had over the years was related somehow to this and the bite that I probably had. Thinking, I guess it was a tick bite, or maybe it was a spider bite, or maybe it was I don't know what it was, but I do believe you can get Lyme from other insects that are blood sucking, because if you have Lyme disease and a mosquito, is on you and sucks your blood, and then they come and bite me and suck my blood, I mean, it's in there somehow. I mean, it's like sharing needles. I mean, I feel like that's what it's like, you know what I mean? And I don't want for them to say like, oh, you can't get Lyme from a mosquito or a spider or anything else that bites like that. I don't believe it. I don't.
Well, I think the most skeptical people I've run into were physicians who didn't really believe me when I really felt I had Lyme disease. and wanted them to help me find that out. People take it seriously now. And I get a lot of emails and phone calls and messages from people wanting information, not knowing where to go, what to do, suspecting they might have Lyme disease. So people are taking it seriously now.
Lyme literate physician is typically, that's going to be one who's been trained by ILADS. If a chronic infectious disease specialist, they're going by the conventional training. So they're going to be looking at the CDC's information, the National Institute's information, and that's pretty much, from my understanding, about as far as it goes. The ILADS training without it, you're going to be, your physician's going to be very severely handicapped.
So I'm curious, did you ever experience any neurological symptoms? She said her Lyme passed the blood-brain barrier into her brain.
It can do that. I had, when I first got sick, I had head tremors, and I would shake, when I got first sick. I know when I was at the clinic in Arizona, there was a guy that had, he forgot everything, and he was young, but they got him back. Like, I was surprised to see every day he was like, I was a new person to him, but then he started remembering that he met me before, and I mean, he really, so Lyme can, any Lyme disease can affect your brain. It can go to your heart. We've had people that in our group or whatever, where it affects you, like they might have been diagnosed. This one girl was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. She was in bed for 10 years, and she found out that she had Lyme disease, started treating, and she's feeling so much better.
Do you know if Lyme is transmissible from human to human at all?
There have been tests done that it can be sexually transmitted, and also there was research where if you do have it, you can transmit it to your baby when you have babies and stuff too. So, and it can cause miscarriages and all kinds of things. Yeah.
Wow.
And they did studies where they've taken 10 brains from Alzheimer patients, and they found out that 9 out of the 10 had Lyme disease. So it's crazy, it's the research being done out there, but it's just not public. So it's going to their brain, and that's what happens when you have so much toxic buildup going to your brain. So
that's huge, that this could be like the secret cause of most cases of Alzheimer's disease, and it's not being talked
toxic.
about.
It could be a toxic thing, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
So how do you feel about the way Lyme is being talked about in the mainstream media, how it's being covered? What are your thoughts and feelings towards that? Do you think they're doing good coverage, or do you think there's stuff they're not talking about they should be? How do you feel?
I think there's a lot that they're not talking about. Having experienced it myself, I just know that. I think most people are told that Lyme is hard to get and easy to treat, and really it's the opposite. It's easy to get and it's hard to treat. And there's a big misconception because people aren't thinking about the difference between acute Lyme and chronic Lyme or persistent Lyme disease. You wouldn't treat breast cancer the same if it were very early stage versus stage 4. So it's hard to compare Lyme disease, if it's caught very early, to a case where someone may have had it for a year, 5 years, 20 years. Maybe they were never treated, like me. It was 21 years until I figured it out. So for the thinking that 2 to 4 weeks of antibiotics was going to cure a Lyme infection of 21 years seems unreasonable to me, versus an infection that someone's had for a week or 2 weeks or even a month.
Like the doctor's like, okay, well, here's 14 days of antibiotics. You should be on your way. That's not enough antibiotics. Like I would not take less than 28 days if I had an initial bite, not less. Maybe even a little more than that, just to be sure. People are leaving there not, even people who are getting treated aren't getting treated enough. So it's not leaving, you know what I mean? And they feel like initially a little better, and then years later it starts to come back again, because I just feel like that's how this works. It's like doctors will give you antibiotic if you have acne for years. I mean, like I was on like acne antibiotics for years. And like, you're like, I have Lyme disease. Can I have like 3 months of antibiotics? They're like, sorry. Like, what is that? You know, it doesn't make sense.
Clinic here is Lifestream Wellness Clinic, both, so that's myself, Dr. Jennifer Smith. She's our shoemaker certified mold specialist, as well as Dr. Melanie Alarcio. She's a pediatric neurologist, and we all work together here to help recover kids, adults, from a wide variety of really horrific health problems. This is why it's critical to get into with a physician that really understands what it is that they're doing. You know, you're talking about a pathogen just for Borrelia that takes a long time for it to replicate. So antibiotics, antimicrobials, most common way that they work is by inhibiting replication. In other words, they prevent the pathogens from dividing into two. And when you do that, then you can kill it. So if you had like E. coli in the gut, you know, that takes 20 minutes to replicate. So every 20 minutes, that antibiotic or antimicrobial herb could kill it. Borrelia takes on average around 4 weeks for it to replicate once. So his recommendation of giving 2 weeks of doxycycline doesn't make sense, right off the bat, because you're only even if it worked at 100% and nothing works at 100%, you're talking about killing off maybe half of the pathogen that's on board, and leaving the other half, and so this is where the conventional physicians will do this 2 weeks of treatment. You still have symptoms, and then they call it post-Lyme syndrome. It's disgusting, but it's what happens.
I've probably got like 6 to 8 people diagnosed in the last probably year. People think you're a little crazy sometimes when they're like, oh my God, I'm not feeling well, I'm having all these. I'm like, do you think you were got bit by a tick? And they're like, well, I did last year. And they didn't care. Like, they got bit by a tick, pulled it out of them, and didn't even go get checked. Like, didn't even get tested, because they don't even think it's a big deal. Even hotel guests that would be like just talking to me at the bar, and they'd be like saying something, and then talking about hiking or whatever, and I'd say, oh, like I have Lyme disease, and they're like, really? Tell me about that, because I feel like I might have Lyme disease. And then I'd start telling them, they're like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get checked, like give me your email, and then they'll go and get checked and end up having Lyme disease, and well, thank you so much for bringing that up. But there's some people that you bring it up to, and they think you're just like the crazy Lyme lady who just wants to talk about Lyme disease all the time. And I don't want to dwell on being sick. I do feel like it's super important to spread awareness.
Looking back, do you think you got Lyme from a tick outside, or do you think maybe a tick got into your house through a pet? Did you go hiking a lot? Were you a very outdoorsy person?
I did not have a pet, and I lived in a rural area, so it was common, to be outside, and sometimes we did go hiking, and there was just a lot of exposure, probably to places where ticks would live. I never saw a tick, ever, at that time, ever. Never saw a bite, never saw a rash, nothing. I had chigger bites, I know that for sure, as I was growing up, but we never saw ticks.
As I talked to more and more people with Lyme disease, it became very clear from their experiences that misconceptions around Lyme were common. I started wondering how this happened. I did a simple Google search on Lyme disease to see what came up. Instead of getting the top sites on Lyme disease, Google hit me with their own information on Lyme disease, which they claim is from the Mayo Clinic. It was full of misleading and incorrect information. It once called the disease rare, saying there were as little as 20,000 cases a year. Now it says over 200,000, when the actual official estimate is around 300,000 cases a year. The truth is, it is much higher. Google also says there will be a bullseye rash pattern, but over 50% of the time this is not true. Other hallmark symptoms such as a brain fog and joint pain are ignored, as well as other insects now known to transmit Lyme. Many people also believe that doxycycline kills the Lyme bacteria. This isn't true. It only stops Lyme from replicating, which is also why it needs to be continued for at least a month. The amount of misconceptions around Lyme disease seems almost as if it were deliberate. How deep does this rabbit hole go? Over and over again, I also heard about the connection between Alzheimer's and Lyme. You may have heard of Chris Christopherson, a famous singer who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Nothing the doctors gave him helped. Over the years, he got worse and worse. Those around him saw the progression of his disease. But finally, they found out he really had Lyme disease, and he was treated with antibiotics and recovered. If 9 out of 10 Alzheimer's patients actually have Lyme, then Lyme could be much more of an epidemic than we've been told. This would explain a lot. Until now, it has been a mystery why Alzheimer's occurs more in women than in men. But many have observed that Lyme disease also occurs more in women than in men. Could it be that Alzheimer's is Lyme disease?
It's Lisa, and I'm from Duncansville, Pennsylvania. I remember getting, this would have been like 14 years ago, I remember getting food poisoning from a church mother-daughter banquet that I went to. Me and my daughter both got it. And then shortly after that, I developed mono, and I was pretty sick. And I also remember sometime in that area getting a bite on my arm. It was very warm. I had a fever. I just thought it was a spider bite, and I'm not sure what it was at that time. And I didn't go to the doctor or anything. It just, I had kind of like flu-like symptoms, and it went away. And so after that, for about a decade, 10 years, I struggled with feeling very tired, very wiped out, very fatigued. And I would go to the doctors and tell them this, and they were like, I said, it feels like I have mono all over again. I just feel so tired and wiped out, like I couldn't get through a day without taking a nap. And they were like, well, the EBV virus, which is the Epstein-Barr virus that comes from the mono, is always going to show up in your blood work. It'll be because it lays dormant in your body because you had it before. It was a previous infection, whatever. So I would say in about 2011, I was in the kitchen and I just fell to the floor. I lost all the strength in my arms and legs. And my daughter and my husband, took me to the ER, and they gave me fluids, and it seemed like I recovered. I was fine. And so that went on, and I was still struggling with the fatigue and working and all that. And 2 years later, October, I had another episode. I went and got my hair done. I come home and I just crashed. I was just wiped out. And when I woke up, I couldn't move my arms and legs. So my husband took me to the ER again. They ran all kinds of tests. I was in there for 4 days. The nurse, who was a guy, came in, and he was telling the other nurses on the floor that he thought I had a depression type illness, that I needed depression pills and stuff like that. And it was very evident that I couldn't move. Like I just couldn't move. So I was tested for MS. I was tested, all kinds of testing they did, brain scans, all that. And the neurologic doctor said to me that, he guaranteed me that it wasn't Lyme disease because as I laid there for 4 days, my husband and I would research, like, what could this be? Why isn't anything showing in my blood work? This is crazy, And I knew I wasn't feeling good prior to that. So anyway, he assured me they did a Lyme titer test and assured me, that it was good. You don't have that. So they sent me home. I had a wheelchair. I had home nursing coming 2 to 3 times a week to try to help me walk with a walker. But the problem was I couldn't hardly use the walker because I had no strength in my arms to even hold myself up. So that life went on for probably, I'd say, 2 months, where I would go to the doctors for a doctor visit and they would say, I don't know what to tell you. Nothing's showing. We don't know what, we don't know what's wrong. So my mom, who lived beside me, would come over in the mornings, help me get out of bed, get dressed and all that. And I got to a point where I was like, you're either going to have to fight this or you're going to die. I felt so bad, so terrible in my body. And I was getting depressed, and I knew that wasn't good, and even the home nursing, it wasn't helping. So we researched more on the internet, and I know internet can be bad sometimes, but it really saved my life.
Dr. Cowden's pretty infamous for his tincture programs. Everything you see here, I have to take all of these medications, besides that one, all of these 4 times a day, on top of all of these tinctures right here that also I take. All of these are basically metal detox. A lot of them are just natural supplements. So this is a detox for the brain nerve cell cleanse. I do this 4 times a day, about 27 drops each time. But through the protocol, I don't know if you can get this on camera or not, as you start going through it, it increases, it keeps to increasing. So you'll see here it changes, what you're taking throughout the day, 4 times a day. And that's been the hardest part, is trying to be a functional human being on a day-to-day basis, work, pay bills, travel, stuff like that, without having an anxiety attack. For me, the Lyme hasn't really infiltrated my joints, from what I think, or a lot of the physical things that a lot of people get, asides, the stomach issues. A lot for me is cognitive issues. I've had a really tough time focusing these past 1.5 to 2 years. It was just kind of what brought me to the doctor initially. You had ADD, you have ADHD, yada, 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 yada. And I was going to a GP for the first 1.5 months, and they just kept throwing me on all kinds of antidepressants, anti-anxieties. You're low on vitamin B, you're low on vitamin D. Nothing seemed to help. So through the nature of my sister, she found me a beautiful naturopathic doctor.
But the weird part was, when he put me on the antibiotics, I felt really bad the first couple weeks. Like the first 2 weeks, I was feeling terrible. The second 2 weeks, I was starting to feel better. Like after I went off the 28 days, he wasn't going to give me any more. So after 2 weeks of not being on the antibiotics, I started getting way worse again. I made an appointment, finally got into this doctor in Bedford. She was a medical doctor, but she was Lyme literate. She said, oh my gosh, yeah, like we're going to test you for some co-infections too. I'm going to give you doxycycline. I'm going to give you Flagyl 2 days a week so that your stomach, and your guts, like, okay, you don't get like C. diff or something like that. That helps with that. So I said, okay. So I started on all the antibiotics. She did end up sending me blood work away for like mycoplasma, Q fever, Bartonella, Babesia. I think those are the only ones she sent. But the Q fever came back negative, the Mycoplasma came back positive, the Bartonella and Babesia came back positive as well. So now I have co-infection. So she's like, oh, well, we have to treat them with an anti-malarial. Which is freaky, because you're thinking, oh, this is not a joke. Like, an anti-malarial, really? So now you're on an anti-malarial and on antibiotics. And this was going on for six months I was on them. She wanted me to be on them for like a year. After 6 months, I'm going to say in the 6-month period I was on it, I was probably 30 to 40% better. So, I mean, I felt like it was working for me. If you think you're going to feel like this the rest of your life, this is probably why people kill themselves, honestly, because it's very bleak to think you're going to feel that bad every day at the young age that you're at. You start to feel like an old person, like an old woman or an old man, like that your bones hurt and you can't do any of the activities you enjoy. You can't interact with family members. You're not wanting to go anywhere. I went from being so active to not ever exercising, never going anywhere, like not leaving my house because I was feeling that ill and not knowing when it would hit. Because it would be like, sometimes you wake up and think, I don't feel that bad today. My pain's only a 5. And a 5 is a great day. I'm going to try to do something. And then I'd be somewhere and it would start to hit me where either I was nauseous or I was starting to get dizzy or, my pain started or whatever. And anxiety attacks, that was another thing I was getting a lot of that came on out of nowhere. Like major anxiety attacks with feeling like my chest was being squeezed. And I think some of that might have been maybe from some of the die-off of the bacteria when I was treating with the antibiotics. Because it was very unpredictable. It would be like, I'd be okay, and then I wouldn't be okay. And I would be so freaked out, like I thought, like legitimately I probably was gonna die that night. Like that's how bad I would feel. It was like my chest was being squeezed with a rubber band, and I'd be sweating, and pain, and my headache, and my vision was blurred. Like just, I felt like my body was shutting down. And people don't understand how terrible that feels. And how people start to want to leave you, thinking like you're no fun anymore because all you do is talk about Lyme disease and how sick you feel. And you're no fun anymore because you don't want to go out to eat, you don't want to go do anything, So really, I mean, it ended my marriage. I lost my job at the time because I couldn't be there. And when I told them I was diagnosed with Lyme, and I honestly, up until that point, was really good about being at work.
But unfortunately, what my doctor thinks has happened is it has progressed to my brain. So the inflammation of the brain is putting pressure on my head in certain places, my brain in certain places. That isn't allowing me to fluidly think, make decisions. Even talking on the camera right now, I'm not even nervous. I just can't think thoroughly. I stutter, and that's something that is brand new to me, for someone who used to love doing, being in front of people and talking to people and et cetera, being social. And unfortunately, with this disease, it brings a lot of pain, not just to the person, but the people around him too. This is what I'm coming to figure out. And one of the biggest things is it's very expensive. I mean, it's a very expensive disease. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional here. It's depleted me of all my extra money that I've ever had. And working has been more than difficult. Partially because a lot of it's physical labor, and I have the energy of an 80-year-old man sometimes, it feels like. So I'm doing everything I possibly can that I know what to do to keep my head on straight, and keep waking up every day, put one foot in front of the other. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are obviously it's the same stuck mystery. Like they're in a cloud, they don't know what the cloud is, the dark cloud, and they can't figure it out. And I've developed a great community through this, through the Lyme. I've reached out to people on social media. I've met local people who are transitioning from Western medicine to naturopathic medicine, and that's... I'm sorry, this is really tough for me.
Then I started treating, and this is another symptom of mine. The shakes. which have gotten better. Anyways, I treated for quite some time with antibiotics. It took me 5 months to Herxheimer. I'm sure you know what a Herxheimer is. It is when the toxin dies inside of you. It really makes you sick. And I prayed for the Lord to take me. I got so sick. For a couple weeks, it was just unbearable. I mean, you take the worst flu you ever had and you just double it. And once I herxed, I saw a steady improvement in my health, finally. But still, I still wake up. I have not woken up without pain for 5 years. Okay, and my Lyme is under control, but the thought of relapse is always there. And it also makes your immune system weaken to where cancers have a chance to take place. Oh, in the meantime, after I had heart surgery, I had skin cancer on my nose, whether it was Lyme related or not. They took the tip of my nose off. I had to have my nose rebuilt. So I think, there was a reason why I wanted to end it all. But I mean, a person can only take so much. But after being diagnosed, I feel there's a fight that needs to be won. The medical profession does not want to admit that there is such a thing as chronic Lyme. Only a certain segment who are highly scrutinized because of antibiotic use, because they feel it makes you susceptible to a superbug. Well, I'm going to tell you fellas, Lyme and its co-infections are the superbug.
I'm wired. It's like exhausted. Sometimes I get home so wired, so overtired. It's like overtired shakiness. I'll be laying in bed and trying to like watch something or read something or whatever, and it takes me a good, even if I'm exhausted, 2 hours to fall asleep. And I don't usually stay asleep. On probably at least 15 nights out of the month, I wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat.
The sleep patterns, because I don't sleep well at all. That's also one of the biggest conundrums for me, is the lack of sleep I get. I'm so fearful now to even try to go to sleep, like lay down, like I'm gonna go to sleep. I have to physically doze off in front of the TV or some sort of blue light, or something that's gonna stimulate me. I've broken sleep. It's hour here, hour there, a couple hours here. So on a good night, maybe 3 hours cumulative. So at night when I can't sleep, I tend to do a lot of pacing. And I also do, I call it self-medicate, but I am a medical card holder of marijuana. And that's what my doctors actually told me to continue with, because it does seem to work to calm me down. So I do CBD pills, and I also use medical marijuana at night when I can't sleep. And it sounds silly, but I'm almost scared to try new things because I'm afraid nothing's really worked. Nothing's really worked to, I'll say, my satisfaction. 'Cause we live in a day where we think we can take a pill and be fine. I do know this journey though. I like to identify it as a journey because it gives me a little more hope that at the end of it, I'll be able to teach others, and help others, and bring it to light, like literally bring Lyme to light, that it's real. It's not some hodgepodge bullshit diagnosis, like it's. I have a great support system, and I'm thankful for that. My mother, who's been a blessing, and my sister has been a really big blessing. Treating Lyme is not easy, but living with Lyme is even harder. You know, that's the hardest part. And it's the amount of work that's involved that, I mean, sometimes I just can't even summon the strength, summon the thoughts, like today, I'm headed to a job, and I'm having heart's pounding out of my chest, and I can't figure out why. And now I'm spent my life savings, unfortunately, on Lyme. And now my parents are able to contribute and help me out a little bit. But it's just cost me thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. You know, I'm only in year 1. You know, and I know people who were suffering it for 5, 6, 7 years. You know, because I have a hard time foreseeing this the next X amount of years or whatever, you know, God has me on this planet for, you know. But then through all this, I'm very grateful to you have to have gratitude. To have a support system, to have people like you who've been doing something like this, I mean, this means a lot to somebody who feels so alone in this disease. I guess one of the biggest emotional turmoils right now for me is Kelly's not able to. I'm losing her. You know, we're losing each other due to this.
The next biggest blockade is going to be finances. You know, people now pay more for their insurance than they do for their mortgage in many cases, and they don't have the funds now, and the insurance doesn't cover anything. You know, it won't help them with with paying for care through me. You know, even though I'm board licensed, you know that insurance companies will oftentimes not recognize me for reimbursing my patients or for covering the labs. Many of the medicines that are needed are not covered as well, and so then we have challenges in that respect. You know, and oftentimes for patients to come in and pay out of pocket, you know, they don't have the funds to do it. And more common than anything else is that they've been to dozens and dozens of physicians. They've been to the best specialists everywhere, and they've had their wallets emptied. You know, by the time they make it to me, someone who's knowledgeable enough to try to figure this out, there's no funds left in order to get them recovered. That's probably one of the biggest challenges.
So that's frustrating too, because then you do start to feel like, well, I can't work because I'm not feeling well enough to go, and I can't afford my bills now, and I can't afford my treatments. And if you don't have insurance and you don't have a job and you can't pay for any supplements, you know what I mean? They probably are worse because they're not taking anything. They're just laying there accepting it and not being able to do anything about it because they're sick, you know, which is, it's frustrating, you know, if you can't pay for it, you can't work to pay for it. It's like a catch-22. You're just not going to get anywhere, you know, and that it'd be cool if there was like some kind of foundations and stuff to help people, you know, like that, or, you know, I'm sure awareness at some point, I hope that within the next few years that just help. I mean, Debbie Gibson was on Dancing with the Stars talking about Lyme disease the other day, so that was awesome.
And I don't mind living the rest of my life. I'm 62. How many years I have left, I have no idea, but there's children that are getting it. Myself and the two ladies decided to form this group so that people have insight. Whenever I was bit, I didn't know this testing was terrible. I lived under the assumption that the 24 to 36 hour thing, you know, it had to be on you. I knew exactly how long the tick was on me, 16 hours. And after I got my results back, I went to see my neurologist, and I told her I was seeing a neurologist, and I regular scheduled appointment. And my specialist gave me a pack of papers like this, proving that I had Lyme disease. I went into the neurologist and saw his assistant and handed her the packet. She leafed over the packet, went and got the doctor. Anyways, I have a terrible temper. They come back and they tried to talk me out of it that I didn't have Lyme disease. And that was just the wrong thing to do. And I pointed up my finger at both of them, which I don't like to lose my temper, but I pointed at both of them. I said, you know what, it's a shame that the two of you don't know any more about Lyme disease than what you do. Even though this area is prevalent, it's an epidemic. This woman that lives in this house right here, it's up for sale, but that's not the reason. She has Lyme disease. My daughter lives a couple mile down the road. She has a dog. It has Lyme disease. Now the dog's a diabetic and it's not doing real well. I'm the Amish connection. Okay? I take the Amish. The Amish, there's a healthy population of Amish here. Some of them have it.
You have to be aware that there is two different standards out there. There is the IDSA and there's the ILAD. And the IDSA believes that it's hard to contract Lyme disease, and it's very easy to treat. So they say if you get treated, you're going to be fine. So if you go back to the doctor with symptoms, they're going to say, well, you were treated with that, you have something else going on here. And that's what the doctors usually go by, is the IDSA. The ILADS believes that it's easy to contract Lyme disease, and it can be chronic and it can be harder to treat. So you got to watch those two different sides of, you know. So we've done some things. We've gone to Harrisburg to try to fight for long-term treatment for Lyme disease, because people have chronic Lyme disease and they need long-term treatment. The insurances should be paying for it, you know, but we've been getting up against a roadblock just because of the representatives being in the insurance industry. They don't want to hear it, you know. It just breaks my heart, you know. I pray for those people, you know, that they can find help and get better.
Because testing is so unreliable, and there really are two completely different views on Lyme disease, that education is really key. People need to understand how difficult Lyme disease can be to diagnose, how unreliable the tests are, how difficult it can be to treat depending on how long you've had it. And they also need to know that even if it's caught early and you're treated with the standard 2 to 4 weeks of antibiotics, in some people that fails and their symptoms persist. And then it spreads throughout their body. Once the infection spreads throughout your body and becomes persistent or chronic, it's just very difficult to treat. People don't really understand this. That's not really the information that's being put out there.
If you get into situations where you get stressed, where anything attacks your immune system, it could probably, you know, bring that out again. So I'm not sure it ever goes away, you know, but I think it can stay in remission if you really watch the foods and stuff that you eat. You don't want to be feeding the infections. You don't want to be eating sugar, gluten, you know, all that. So it's just a constant fight, you know.
when you got your bite and you suspected it could be a tick bite or maybe a spider bite, was that indoors or could it have been outdoors? Were you a hiker? Did you go outdoors a lot or something?
We had a dog, so I'm thinking it probably was from that. We didn't live up against the woods, but we had mountains around us and stuff, and we would take our dog to different places hiking and stuff like that. So I believe if that indeed was a tick bite on my arm, that it was probably, come from the dog, and sometimes people can get, we have someone in our group who was bitten, and then was rebitten years later and showed positive the second time, which he had it the first time is just because the tests didn't show it, because they're only 50% accurate. But he was like, thank God I got bit again, because now he knows what was wrong with him all this time. So you can get reinfected or infected with another kind of tick bite that makes you sick. So, and we have heard so many stories through our Lyme group that are heartbreaking, and there's so much controversy out there even on how long a tick is attached where you can get sick, because they're saying it has to be attached for 24 hours. And we have someone that knows it was only like 7 hours when he got deathly ill when it was attached, because he was in the woods and he knew when he came in he was in the woods. And so it's not like anyone can say, okay, you're okay at 23 hours, but once that tick's in there for 24, it's transmitting diseases. It attaches to you and it's automatically spewing that into you, So who knows how long? It could be an hour and you could be affected. And you could not know that you have a bite, just because if it's on your back or something, it can feed from you and then fall off in the shower. You would never know it. And only probably 40% of people get a bullseye rash. So, if you're sick and you don't know why and the doctors keep telling you it's nothing, you just have to keep going with it, keep fighting and do what you have to do to try to really find out what's going on with you. Because your body, and going to a regular doctor for a 10-minute visit, there's no way they can figure out what's wrong with you in 10 minutes.
I'm always trying different supplements or different modalities that I think might help. I still do have pain throughout my body. My neck pain is the worst. I thank God that I don't have that drill going through my head. But I do have a stiff, painful neck, and that causes a headache all the time. So I just go on with life. You have to. You can either give up or you can go on. And so I know I'll never give up. That's really not an option.
So this can be why you can treat, and if you don't get the stragglers that are buried in the biofilms and deep in the tissues, then months later you can see them pop back out again. But first you have to put a mixture of medicine on board that's able to address all the pathogens that are on board that are effective against the pathogens on board before you go dissolving biofilms, because otherwise it's you're letting the bad guys out of the jail before the police are there to capture them.
Have you tried any dietary changes?
Oh my, yes. That is key to Lyme disease. No sugar, absolutely no sugar.
Sugar, wheat, milk, things that are commonly sensitive for people. And when I eliminated those, I definitely did see a decrease in pain and inflammation and brain fog. But there were a lot of different foods that I did have to eliminate for a while.
And I do one thing that I think saved my life. I do coffee enemas, and I do them, 3 times a week, just to keep my liver flushed out from the toxins. And my liver, they're saying my liver is in good shape and stuff. So with everything I've been through, it's a wonder, But I think that's one thing, that really helps. I noticed when I cut out the sugars and the gluten that my gut felt better. Like I noticed that, that bloating and all that wasn't there. But when I would try to, if I ate something sugar, like a piece of cake that was really high in sugar, I would feel terrible. The poison feeling in my body was like, oh my gosh, I know what I did.
I do a tonic that I make with like lemons that has olive oil, extra virgin organic olive oil in it. And like every morning, like you put like a lemon in the blender with water and olive oil, and you blend it, and like you drink 8 ounces a day of this in the morning, and it's like a detoxing, and it helps your liver clear, and that's helped me feel like a lot better. I make my own like detoxing tea from like herbs in my garden, and drink apple cider vinegar. I do all these things like this, and do healthy fats like organic coconut oil I put in my tea, and I believe the healthy fats, it's like such a myth where you eat fat and you get fat, because it's helped me like lose the weight that I had gained and I think I gained the weight because it was like inflammation and my body wasn't absorbing things. I've made so much progress with all of that, but I do have to keep up with taking my supplements right now. Like it's not just, I can't just not take anything. So I'm taking 40 supplements a day to keep at this level.
What I would tell people is you have to be your own best advocate. Don't give up. Always do your own research. Don't believe everything you're told.
Magnesium helps so many things, from muscle pain to brain fog to, fatigue. Magnesium is a big deal. Like I take that. That's one I wouldn't want to be without. The adaptogens are pretty awesome, and rhodiola I think is a pretty good one. I now take ashwagandha, and it really helps with the panic attacks, and it even helps with fatigue. It's odd how they work, because it's sort of like you can be like, it can help you like calm down, and it can help you with your anxiety, but it also makes you not feel tired. You know what I mean? It'll still make you feel like good. Silver. Colloidal silver. That's another good one. I drink that every day, like 3 teaspoons a day, or 1 teaspoon 3 times a day, really. That just helps with a lot of things, killing off bacteria and helping to boost your immune system. So I think that's a good one.
More research. I would say more funding, more research. Give the people a chance, to honestly fight, and quit throwing the dart at the wall and hoping it sticks, through the other general practitioners and, psychiatrists that I've seen, If anything, out of all this, at the end of the day, I would want people to understand that it definitely needs to be researched more. We need more money, funding. We need more soldiers on the ground and more believers, because it's as real as it gets.
One treatment shown to be effective is hyperthermia. This is where the body is slowly heated to 107 degrees and you are basically cooked for 2 hours. There is no reason it should be expensive, but overregulation makes it impossible to offer treatments such as this at an affordable price, especially in the United States. However, with a bit of planning, many people have figured out how to do this right in the comfort of their own home. Aside from hyperthermia, supplements can help. We teamed up with an herbalist who created an herbal Lyme support formula, and we are offering it for free to anyone who needs it for free. You'll want to visit postlyme.com. There you'll be able to learn about different treatment options such as hyperthermia and receive free herbs.